The Paradoxical Era from 1968 to 1980. With conflicting tendencies, this was a transitional era between the reformist period of the Great Society and the conservative presidency of Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Eisenhower chose Nixon as his running mate in 1952 and 1956, and Nixon resurfaced as the Republican presidential candidate in 1968 against Hubert Humphrey, whom he defeated by a slim margin. Reforms enacted during Nixon's first term included the Supplementary Security Income Program, major revisions in the Food Stamps Program, indexing of the Social Security Program, revenue sharing, addition of the Family Planning Program to the Public Health Act, assorted health legislation, development of affirmative action policies, the establishment of the Occupational and Safety Health Administration, and policies that led to the desegregation of virtually all Southern schools. In his second term, the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the Child Abuse Prevention Act of 1973 were enacted. Even during his liberal period, Nixon's rhetoric remained staunchly conservative. The economic stagnation made some blue-collar Americans fear that African Americans and women might take their jobs from them. Nixon manipulated civil service system to place into office conservative persons of dubious merit. He impounded funds that had already been appropriated by Congress for social programs, proposed significant decreases in the funds of most major programs, and demanded a drastic reduction of the federal workforce. Nixon's effectiveness in waging this war against liberalism was stymied by the aftermath of the break-in at the Democratic campaign headquarters in the Watergate office in 1973, and he resigned in August of 1974 and was succeeded by Gerald Ford. Ford was a political conservative who had spent years in Congress criticizing programs of the Great Society, and his term can be characterized as a continuous stalemate between liberals and conservatives over the size of social spending. Ford's major policy became the presidential veto, and he used to stimulate legislation and spending increases proposed by Congress. The Congress overrode a number of vetoes and increased funding for school lunches, education, and health care programs. Education for All Handicapped Children Act was passed during his term, which provided federal subsidies to schools so that children with disabilities could be mainstreamed into regular classes. Jimmy Carter, a Georgia governor, decided in 1972 to mount a campaign to secure the Democratic nomination for presidency in 1976. He encountered a bleak economic situation with massive deficit from Ford, high rates of inflation, and increased levels of social spending. In 1977, Carter introduced a comprehensive scheme for a welfare program and proposed to consolidate AFDC, the former food stamp program, and SSI so as to provide a national minimum income, as well as a three-tiered benefit system based on workers' ability and income. Only 2 years after his election, Carter had the worst popularity rating of any president, but was still able to obtain the Democratic nomination in 1980, but lost to Ronald Reagan. Policy changes that were made in the 1970s constitute a hidden social spending revolution in the American social policy. For the first time in American history, a relatively sophisticated safety net of social programs existed for persons who lacked resources. The progress of improving economic status of Americans was accompanied by a revolution of human rights.
Created using Powtoon.